Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
My wife texted me at 7:43 p.m. on a Tuesday. Late dinner with clients again. Don't wait up, honey. Need to close some big deals tonight. I stared at the message on my phone screen, sitting in our renovated Victorian home in Millbrook, Maine. The smart home system I'd installed last year hummed quietly around me, monitoring everything from the temperature to the security cameras I'd positioned around our property. Charlotte didn't know about those cameras yet. I typed back, "Enjoy the lobster. Tell Rick Dalton his stock portfolio looks interesting today." My phone rang within 30 seconds. "Luke, what the hell does that mean?" Charlotte's voice was sharp, panicked. I could hear Rick shouting in the background, his voice muffled but clearly agitated. "Just making conversation, sweetheart. How's the client dinner going?" I kept my voice casual, almost bored. "You're being paranoid again. We've talked about this." "Have we?" "Because I don't remember talking about you and Rick meeting at his lakeside mansion every Tuesday for the past 4 months." The line went dead. I set the phone down and walked to my basement workshop, where I'd been spending most of my evenings lately. As CEO of Grady Tech Financial, a fintech startup that had been steadily eating into Rick's market share, I had access to resources Charlotte didn't know I possessed. The multiple monitors on my workbench displayed real-time stock data, client portfolios, and something else entirely. For 6 months, I'd been quietly dismantling Rick Dalton's company piece by piece. Every client Charlotte fed him information about, every insider detail she shared during their romantic dinners, I used to outmaneuver them both. While they thought they were playing chess, I'd been playing an entirely different game. My daughter Megan appeared at the top of the basement stairs. At 17, she had inherited Charlotte's sharp intelligence, but thankfully not her mother's capacity for deception. "Dad? Mom's car just pulled up, but she's on the phone and sounds really upset." "Thanks, kiddo. Why don't you head to your room for a bit? Your mother and I need to have a conversation." Megan nodded, understanding immediately. She'd always been perceptive about the tension in our house. I heard Charlotte's heels clicking across the hardwood floors upstairs, then the slam of her purse hitting the kitchen counter. When I emerged from the basement, she was standing in our dining room, arms crossed, still wearing the black dress she'd claimed was for client meetings. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" "Because talking implies honesty, and we both know that's not your strong suit anymore." Charlotte's perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the flush of anger rising in her cheeks. At 36, she was still strikingly beautiful, with the kind of sharp features and cold blue eyes that had made her formidable in the courtroom. As a senior attorney at Morrison & Associates, she was used to controlling every conversation, manipulating every situation to her advantage. "You're being ridiculous, Luke. Rick is a business contact, nothing more." I pulled out my phone and opened a photo. Funny thing about business contacts, Char. They usually don't require you to take your shirt off during negotiations. The image showed Charlotte and Rick on the deck of his mansion, her blouse draped over a chair, his hands on her waist. I'd taken it myself 3 weeks ago from a boat on the lake, using a telephoto lens I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Charlotte's mask slipped completely. The composed attorney vanished, replaced by something desperate and angry. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting my interests. There's a difference." She moved toward me, her voice dropping to the icy tone she used in court when she was about to destroy a witness. "You pathetic little man. Do you think this changes anything? Do you think anyone would choose you over Rick?" "Actually, yes, especially when they find out Rick's company is about to collapse." Charlotte laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Rick's company is worth $50 million. Your little startup is nothing compared to what he's built." "Was worth $50 million. As of this morning, it's worth considerably less. Turns out investors get nervous when they discover their CEO has been making decisions based on pillow talk instead of market analysis." The color drained from Charlotte's face. "What did you do?" "What you taught me to do, sweetheart. I played the long game." Charlotte raised her hand to slap me, but I caught her wrist easily. For all her sharp intelligence and courtroom dominance, she'd forgotten that I'd grown up in a blue-collar family in South Portland. Before I'd built my company, before I'd married into her world of corporate law and country club memberships, I'd known how to handle myself. That all you got? I asked, releasing her wrist. She stared at me for a long moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Then she turned and walked toward the front door. Where are you going? To fix this mess you've created. With what car? I had yours repossessed this afternoon. Turns out the loan was in my name. Charlotte spun around, her eyes wide. You can't do that. Already did. Oh, and I changed the passwords on all our joint accounts. You'll find your credit cards have been canceled too. Amazing what you can accomplish when you actually read the fine print on legal documents. For the first time since I'd known her, Charlotte looked genuinely afraid. You bastard. Maybe. But I'm a bastard who still has a car, a house, and a daughter who respects me. What do you have, Charlotte? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out her phone and started dialing. I watched her face change as the call went to voicemail, then again as she tried a second number. Rick's not answering, I asked. That's strange. Maybe he's busy dealing with the margin calls on his portfolio. Charlotte's hands were shaking now. This isn't over, Luke. You're right. It's just getting started. The next morning, I drove to the Blue Heron, a dive bar on the outskirts of town that served as Millbrook's unofficial gossip headquarters. Despite the early hour, the parking lot was already half full with pickup trucks and aging sedans belonging to the regulars who treated the place like their personal social club. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of coffee that had been brewing since before dawn. The bartender, Tommy Kowalski, had been serving the same crowd for 20 years and knew more about Millbrook's secrets than the police chief. Luke Grady, Tommy called out as I took a seat at the bar. Don't usually see you in here during business hours. Taking a personal day, I said, coffee black. Heard there was some excitement at your place last night, said a voice from the corner booth. Old man Halverson, my elderly neighbor, was nursing what looked like his third beer of the day, despite it being barely 10 a.m. News travels fast in this town. Especially when it involves Charlotte storming out of your house at midnight, screaming into her phone, Halverson continued, woke up half the neighborhood. Tommy set down my coffee and leaned against the bar. Also heard Rick Dalton's been having some business troubles. Stock price dropped 30% yesterday. I took a sip of coffee and said nothing. Funny thing, Tommy continued. Sophie Lynn was in here last night, bragging about how she and Charlotte were about to get the drop on someone. Didn't mention any names, but she seemed pretty confident about something. Sophie Lynn was Charlotte's best friend and the HR director at Morrison & Associates. If she was involved, this conspiracy ran deeper than just an affair. Sophie say anything else interesting? Matter of fact, she did. Mentioned something about a new car Rick was buying, expensive one. Ferrari, I think she said. I finished my coffee and left a 20 on the bar. Thanks for the information, Tommy. Anytime, Luke. And hey, if you need anything, you know where to find us. I spent the rest of the morning at my office, a converted warehouse space in Millbrook's small downtown district. Grady Tech Financial employed 12 people, all of whom I'd hired personally and trusted completely. Unlike Charlotte's corporate law firm, with its backstabbing politics and ethical flexibility, my company operated on simple principles: honesty, hard work, and loyalty. My assistant, Jennifer Walsh, knocked on my office door around noon. Luke, there's someone here to see you. Says it's about Charlotte. The woman who entered my office was young, maybe 28, with nervous energy and the kind of tired eyes that came from working too many late nights. I recognized her as Danielle Kerr, one of the paralegals at Charlotte's firm. Mr. Grady, I hope you don't mind me coming here, but I need to talk to someone, and I think you need to hear what I have to say. Please sit down. Call me Luke. Danielle perched on the edge of the chair across from my desk, clutching a manila envelope. I've been working for Charlotte for 2 years, and I've seen things, heard things. I know about her and Rick Dalton. What kind of things? She's been feeding him information about your company, client lists, financial data, strategic plans. She's been copying files from your home computer when you're asleep. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd suspected something like this. Do you have proof? Danielle opened the envelope and spread several documents across my desk. Email printouts, financial records, and what looked like photographs taken with a phone camera. She's been planning this for months, Luke. She and Rick want to destroy your company, then buy up the pieces for pennies on the dollar. After that, she was going to divorce you and take half of everything that was left. I studied the documents, my anger building with each page. The emails between Charlotte and Rick were explicit, not just about their affair, but about their plans for my company and my future. Why are you telling me this, Danielle? Because I hate her, Danielle said simply. She treats everyone at the firm like garbage, takes credit for other people's work, and thinks she's untouchable. But mostly because she's planning to frame me for the information theft. She's been setting me up to take the fall if anyone discovers what she's been doing. What do you want in return for this information? A job, and I want to watch her burn. I looked at Danielle Kerr, this young woman who'd been underestimated and abused by Charlotte, and saw something of myself in her determination. You're hired. Welcome to Grady Tech Financial. That afternoon, I drove to Rick's lakeside mansion, a sprawling modern house that screamed new money and poor taste. His red Ferrari was parked in the circular driveway, still bearing temporary tags. I parked my truck behind the Ferrari and got out, carrying a small toolkit I'd brought from my workshop. The mansion sat on 5 acres of wooded property, isolated from the nearest neighbors. Perfect for what I had in mind. I opened the Ferrari's hood and located the oil drain plug, loosening it just enough to create a slow leak. Then I moved to the tires, letting the air out of 3 of them until they were nearly flat, but not obviously damaged. Finally, I used a bar of soap to write "Home Wrecker" across the windshield in large letters. What the hell do you think you're doing? Rick Dalton emerged from his house, wearing khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than most people made in a week. At 40, he was still handsome in a generic corporate way, with the kind of artificial confidence that came from inherited wealth and unearned privilege. Just admiring your new car, Rick. Nice color. Matches your personality. Rick's face flushed red as he saw the soap on his windshield and noticed his flat tires. You psychotic bastard! I'm calling the police. Go ahead. I'm sure they'd love to hear about your business practices and your extracurricular activities. Rick pulled out his phone, but I stepped closer, close enough that he could see I wasn't the same soft suburban husband he'd been expecting. You know what your problem is, Rick? You think everyone else is as weak as you are. You think because you inherited your daddy's company and married into the right social circles, you're untouchable. You're insane. Maybe. But I'm not stupid, and I'm not going away. Rick tried to push past me to get to his car, but I grabbed his arm and shoved him back against the Ferrari's hood. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop trying to steal my clients. And you're going to pray that I don't decide to get creative about how I destroy what's left of your pathetic little empire. You can't threaten me like this. I'm not threatening you, Rick. I'm making you a promise. I released him and stepped back, pulling out my phone to take a picture of him standing next to his vandalized car. Smile for the camera. I'm sure Charlotte will want to see how her boyfriend handles pressure. Rick's face went white. You're finished, Grady. I'll ruin you. I'll destroy everything you've built. I laughed, a sound that surprised even me with its coldness. You can try. But here's the thing about fighting someone who has nothing left to lose, Rick. They fight dirty, and they don't stop. I walked back to my truck, leaving Rick standing in his driveway next to his crippled Ferrari. As I drove away, I could see him in my rearview mirror, frantically trying to call someone on his phone. Let him call. The game was just beginning, and I was finally playing to win. The next morning brought the first sign that Rick was escalating beyond financial warfare. Megan called me from school, her voice shaky and scared. Dad, something weird happened. This guy approached me in the parking lot after first period. He said he had a message from Mom that I needed to come with him. My blood turned to ice. Where are you now? In the principal's office. Mrs. Patterson saw what was happening and intervened. The guy left when she started yelling, but Dad, I've never seen him before. And Mom's been staying at Sophie's house since your fight. I'm coming to get you right now. Don't leave the office until I get there. I called Detective Ray Landis on my way to the school. Ray was an old friend of my father's, a no-nonsense cop who'd been working Millbrook streets for 25 years. Ray, it's Luke Grady. I need to report an attempted abduction. Slow down, Luke. What happened? I explained the situation as I drove, including the context of Charlotte's affair and Rick's business troubles. Ray listened without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification. Sounds like your wife's boyfriend is trying to apply pressure, Ray said when I finished. We'll need to talk to your daughter, get a description of this guy. You have any idea who Rick might have hired?
I deleted her number! You deleted it? She tagged you in a photo an hour ago. My everything thing with a—
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Right-hand man at the company is Elliot Moore. Ex-military, handles Rick's dirty work. Big guy, probably mid-40s, drives a black SUV. I'll put out a bolo on him. Meanwhile, you might want to consider keeping Megan close to home for a few days. I picked up Megan from school and brought her back to my office, where she could stay safe while I figured out my next move. Jennifer set her up in the conference room with her laptop and homework, while I retreated to my office to plan. Danielle knocked on my door an hour later, carrying another manila envelope. I've been digging through Charlotte's files, she said. Found something you need to see. The documents she showed me were financial records from Rick's company, detailing a complex scheme to manipulate stock prices and insider trading that went back months. Charlotte had been providing legal advice on how to structure the transactions to avoid SEC scrutiny. This is federal crime territory, I said, studying the papers. Gets better. Look at this. Danielle showed me an email chain between Charlotte, Rick, and Sophie, discussing their plan to have me committed to a psychiatric facility after they destroyed my company. They'd already consulted with a doctor who would testify that my paranoid behavior and business failures indicated a mental breakdown requiring involuntary treatment. They were going to have me locked up for at least 6 months, long enough for Charlotte to gain control of your assets and Megan's custody. I stared at the emails, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. This wasn't just about an affair or business competition. They'd been planning to destroy my entire life, steal my daughter, and leave me with nothing. Danielle, I need you to make copies of everything and put them in a safe deposit box. Then, I want you to prepare a complete dossier on Rick's financial crimes. We're going to need it. What are you planning, Luke? I'm going to give them exactly what they've been asking for. That evening, I drove out to the remote woodland road that connected Millbrook to the interstate. It was the route Rick would have to take to get home from his office, a winding stretch of asphalt surrounded by dense forest. I parked my truck in a clearing about halfway along the route and waited. At 8:30 p.m., I saw the headlights of Elliot's black SUV approaching from the direction of town. I pulled out onto the road behind him and began following, staying close enough to make my presence obvious. After a few miles, Elliot pulled over onto the shoulder and got out of his vehicle. He was exactly what I'd expected. 6'4", military-bearing, the kind of man who'd been hired specifically to intimidate people. He walked back toward my truck with the confident stride of someone who'd never lost a fight. I got out to meet him, keeping my hands visible but ready. You Luke Grady? He asked. Depends who's asking. Name's Elliot Moore. I work for Rick Dalton. He sent me to deliver a message. I'm listening. Back off. Stop harassing Mr. Dalton. Stop interfering with his business, and stay away from his property. If you don't, things are going to get unpleasant for you and your family. I studied Elliot's face in the dim light from our headlights. He was a professional, probably ex-Special Forces, definitely dangerous. But he was also just doing a job, following orders from a man who'd never had to fight his own battles. Here's my message for Rick, I said. If he or anyone working for him comes near my daughter again, I'll kill him. Elliot smiled, a cold expression that didn't reach his eyes. That sounds like a threat, Mr. Grady. It's a promise. And unlike your boss, I keep my promises. Elliot took a step closer, trying to use his size to intimidate me. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was waiting this long to fight back. What happened next surprised both of us. Instead of backing down or escalating to violence, I simply got back in my truck and drove away, leaving Elliot standing on the side of the road. But I didn't go home. Instead, I circled back through the woods on foot, using hunting skills my father had taught me 30 years ago. I found Elliot's SUV parked where he'd left it and used my toolkit to disable it, removing the distributor cap and deflating all 4 tires. When Elliot returned to his vehicle 20 minutes later, I was waiting in the tree line with my phone's camera ready. I recorded his frustrated attempts to start the engine, his angry phone calls to Rick, and his eventual decision to walk back toward town. Only then did I emerge from the woods. Need a ride? I called out. Elliot spun around, his hand moving instinctively toward what was probably a concealed weapon. Relax, I said. I'm not armed, and I'm not looking for a fight. I just want to make sure you understand the situation. What situation? You're a professional. You do what you're paid to do, and you're probably pretty good at it. But Rick Dalton isn't paying you enough to die for him. And that's what's going to happen if you keep threatening my family. Elliot studied my face in the darkness. Whatever he saw there seemed to give him pause. This is just business, Grady, nothing personal. It became personal when you went after my daughter. Now it's war. I tossed the distributor cap at his feet and walked back to my truck, leaving Elliot stranded on the empty road. As I drove home, I could see him in my rearview mirror, illuminated by my taillights as he knelt beside his disabled vehicle. The next phase of my plan was already taking shape in my mind. Rick had made the mistake of thinking he was dealing with the same passive suburban husband who'd been married to Charlotte for 15 years. He was about to learn how wrong he was. 2 days later, I received the call I'd been expecting. Charlotte's voice was strained, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. Luke, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Has it? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels like it's just getting started. Rick says you threatened to kill him, that you attacked Elliot on some back road. Rick says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. Luke, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I almost laughed. After months of betrayal, after discovering their plan to have me committed and steal everything I'd worked for, she thought we could work this out. What exactly are you proposing, Charlotte? Meet us tonight. Rick's mansion, 9 p.m. We'll discuss terms. Terms for what? Your surrender. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, processing what I'd just heard. They actually believed they were in a position to dictate terms. They thought they were still in control. I called Detective Landis. Ray, they're making their move tonight. Rick's mansion, 9 p.m. I think they have Megan. Luke, you can't go in there alone. Let me handle this officially. They won't hurt her as long as they think they can use her as leverage. But if the police show up, all bets are off. Then what do you want me to do? Give me 30 minutes. If you don't hear from me by 9:30, come in hard. I spent the afternoon preparing. I made copies of all the evidence Danielle had gathered and left them with Jennifer, along with instructions to deliver them to the FBI if anything happened to me. I wrote a letter to Megan explaining everything, just in case. At 8:45 p.m., I drove up the winding driveway to Rick's mansion. The house was lit up like a stage set, every window blazing with light. Rick's Ferrari was parked in front, repaired and washed clean of my soap message. I parked next to it and walked to the front door, which opened before I could knock. Luke. Charlotte stood in the doorway, wearing a black cocktail dress and her courtroom smile. Thank you for coming. Where's Megan? She's safe. Come in. The mansion's interior was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture arranged without taste, modern art chosen for its price tag rather than its beauty, and the kind of ostentatious displays of wealth that screamed insecurity. Rick was waiting in the living room, standing behind a leather sofa with his hands clasped behind his back. He'd traded his usual polo shirt for a suit, as if this were a board meeting rather than a kidnapping. Luke, good to see you again. Please, have a seat. I'll stand. Where's my daughter? She's upstairs, perfectly safe. She'll stay that way as long as you're reasonable. Charlotte moved to stand beside Rick, presenting a united front. The affair was out in the open now, no more pretense of marriage or fidelity. Here's what's going to happen, Rick continued. You're going to transfer ownership of your company to me for the nominal sum of $1. You're going to publicly apologize for your harassment and threats, and you're going to sign these divorce papers, giving Charlotte full custody of Megan and half of all remaining assets. He gestured to a stack of legal documents on the coffee table. And if I refuse, then you'll be committed to a psychiatric facility for evaluation and treatment. We have a doctor prepared to testify that your recent behavior indicates a complete mental breakdown. I looked at Charlotte, the woman I'd been married to for 15 years, the mother of my child. This was always the plan, wasn't it? The affair, the business sabotage, all of it. You were never good enough for me, Luke. I just finally found the courage to do something about it. Courage, I laughed, a sound that made both of them take a step back. You call this courage? Hiring thugs to threaten my daughter? Planning to have me locked up in a mental hospital? This isn't courage, Charlotte. This is cowardice. Rick moved closer, trying to project authority. Sign the papers, Luke. It's over. You're right about one thing. It is over. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. It displayed a live audio feed that had been broadcasting our entire conversation. Ray, did you get all that? Detective Landis's voice came through the phone's speaker. Every word. We're coming in now. The front door burst open and Ray entered with 2 other officers, weapons drawn. Nobody move! Police! Rick's face went white. You can't do this. We have rights. You have the right to remain silent, Ray said, pulling out his handcuffs. I suggest you use it. Charlotte looked at me with pure hatred. You bastard! You planned this. I learned from the best, sweetheart. As Ray read them their rights, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Megan appeared, escorted by another officer. She ran to me, and I held her tight, feeling the fear and tension of the past few days finally begin to drain away. Are you okay? I asked. I'm fine, Dad. They didn't hurt me. But I heard everything. I can't believe Mom was part of this. I looked over at Charlotte, who was being handcuffed by one of Ray's officers. She was staring at Megan with something that might have been regret, but it was too little. Too late. Some people make choices that can't be undone, I told Megan. Your mother made hers. As they led Charlotte and Rick away, Charlotte turned back to me one last time. This isn't over, Luke. Yes, it is. The arrests made the front page of the Millbrook Herald the next morning. By afternoon, the story had been picked up by the Portland Press and the Boston Globe. By evening, it was trending on social media. The evidence Danielle had gathered proved even more damaging than I'd hoped. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit took over the case within 48 hours, and what they found in Rick's company records was enough to file federal charges for securities fraud, insider trading, and conspiracy. Charlotte's law firm fired her immediately and began their own internal investigation into how much client information she'd compromised. The Maine State Bar launched disciplinary proceedings that would likely result in her permanent disbarment. But the real destruction came from the court of public opinion. Sophie Lynn, faced with potential charges as an accessory, quickly turned on her former friends. She provided investigators with additional evidence of Charlotte and Rick's schemes, including recorded phone conversations, where they discussed their plans in detail. The recordings were leaked to social media within days, and the reaction was swift and brutal. Charlotte and Rick became pariahs overnight, their names associated with betrayal, fraud, and child endangerment. Rick's company collapsed completely. His investors fled, his clients canceled their contracts, and his board of directors voted him out unanimously. The mansion went into foreclosure within a month. Charlotte, released on bail pending trial, found herself unemployable and friendless. The social circles she'd cultivated for years wanted nothing to do with her. Even her own family distanced themselves from the scandal. I could have felt sorry for them. Maybe I should have. But every time I considered mercy, I remembered their plan to have me committed, their willingness to use Megan as a pawn, their complete lack of remorse until they were caught. 3 months after the arrests, Millbrook held its annual charity gala at the historic Riverside Event Center. It was the social event of the year, attended by everyone who mattered in town. I hadn't planned to go, but Jennifer convinced me it would be good for business. I was standing near the bar, making small conversation with potential clients. When I saw them enter, Charlotte and Rick walked into the event center together, dressed formally and trying to project confidence. But I could see the desperation in their movements, the way they scanned the room looking for friendly faces that weren't there. The reaction was immediate. Conversation stopped, people turned away. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tommy Kowalski, who was bartending the event, caught my eye and nodded toward the projection screen that was set up for the evening's presentation. "Danielle's got something special planned," he said quietly. As if summoned by her name, Danielle appeared beside me. She was wearing an elegant blue dress and carrying a laptop bag. "Ready for the grand finale?" she asked. "What did you do?" "I prepared a presentation for tonight's entertainment. A comprehensive review of Charlotte and Rick's business practices, complete with email excerpts, financial records, and some very interesting photographs." Before I could respond, the lights dimmed and the projection screen lit up with the title, "A Case Study in Corporate Fraud and Personal Betrayal." What followed was 15 minutes of devastating evidence, presented with the clinical precision of a legal brief. Every email, every financial transaction, every lie was laid out in excruciating detail. The photographs from their affair were tastefully censored, but unmistakably damning. The audience watched in stunned silence as their crimes were dissected and displayed. By